Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. This will be a very sort of personal episode that you guys may have no interest in, so I'm going to release this as a video at the same time I'm releasing something else, so you guys can focus on the one that's probably more suited for the channel. So yesterday, I'm on Instagram, and there's very few folks that I subscribe to because I like to keep my feed very productive. I have rules about the way people post before I'm going to follow them. I don't like meme posters on Instagram. I like life, talent, something that someone's creating. And because I follow my acquaintance friend, LL Cool J, he's had to post these, what he calls his rest in power posts. And this is when someone passes away. And I'm looking at a post of ShockG from Digital Underground, the dude who's like the brain behind the whole thing. It's his thing. And he says, rest in power at the bottom. And I'm like, what? You know, like, I know ShockG's older than me, but come on. With DMX, another horrible situation. We had days of notice that this was occurring, still a shock. And honestly, DMX had more recent material than ShockG. ShockG retired in 2005 with this really cool open letter to the world, just basically saying, hey, look, man, I'm not enjoying what I'm doing in the studio. I don't like the pressure. It makes me do drugs, and I don't want to do drugs anymore. Which, I don't know, maybe it has something to do with his passing. I get it. But this is why I think that some of you are just going to dial out real fast. And I understand it's not your era, perhaps. But there was some magic in the 80s when it came to rap music, as I've alluded to several times. And I think I'm going to wander around the genre to sort of drive home further the point of losing someone like ShockG. But I just, I released that episode called Burying Our Heroes, which is all about this. And now we're dealing with it again. 57 years old, born August 25th, 63. Gregory Jacobs is his proper name. So that's why he calls himself ShockG. Now, ShockG had tons of aliases and characters that he created over the course of his rap history. And to be honest, I'm not a guy that will sit there and dig into people's pasts very often, because I kind of just have this old-fashioned feeling that I'm stalking them, and it's sort of their world. Now, if I was going to interview ShockG, I would definitely dive in so I'd have some material to trigger questions and responses from him where I think there might be some interesting stories or something like that. But other than that, I don't really dive into folks. I interviewed Bart Sabrell, the only interview on this entire show. And it was beautiful. He said it was his most successful interview in the shortest period of time of getting views and that kind of stuff. So I was really happy with that. What I learned was I cut out 90% of my vocals on my end of the interview, which was good. So you wouldn't hear me go, yeah, oh, It's like such a rookie move on my part. But there was something utterly special about ShockG. I mean, as a whole, there's a million things that he did that was brilliant. But to set the scene up correctly, to fully appreciate what giants he had to stand next to while he was making his mark as a giant. My policy with life, and I highly encourage this in your own life, I haven't found any reason not to do this. So if I find a reason to counteract this theory, then I'll share it with you at some point in time. I try to surround myself with the finest human beings in planet Earth, both from a personal standpoint, but when I reach out and I'm allowing some personality in this world to infect my reality of whom I do not know, or I will never meet them because they're already gone or what have you, I try to make those the finest human beings on this planet. Their stories, their contributions, what I'm taking from them, the Rod Serlings of the world, the Stanley Kubricks of the world, the Walt Disneys of the world, geniuses that understood humanity at a level that is difficult to ever get back into our civilization. When you have those 1 in a billion people die, and probably 1 in 7 billion people die, it's going to take you years to get another one of those folks back, and especially in those areas. And you never will. You're never going to get a Jimi Hendrix back, a Stevie Ray Vaughan back. You're just not. A Freddie Mercury. And like I said in the episode about burying our heroes, there's something weird about this thing where even though ShockG had made music, like an album that we could all digest, it's like Outkast. We'll probably never get another Outkast album, but we still hope that Big Boy and Andre 3000 are living wonderful lives wherever they are. We wish them the very best and want them to live a wonderful life because they gave us a slice of our life that was wonderful because of their contribution, their creativity, and their sacrifice. And until you ever gift the world with one of those moments, you really don't know what it takes to create one of those gifts for the entire world. Look at Michael Jackson. The dude lost a good part of his humanity, but still maintained his humanity to give us everything that we experience with the Jackson 5, Off the Wall, Thriller, Bad Album, etc., right? Prince, same thing. Prince practices 24/7, 365 his entire life, goes 3 days without sleeping, never did any coke or anything like that any of his band members remember, and ironically dies of a fentanyl overdose. So 80s rap was, I think, a lot more difficult than 90s rap. And it has to do with the fact that it's what Prince said in his song Positivity. It's more hard to love than it is to hate. And that's why my episode, maybe I'll put this out with Dopamine, but I got to make sure the Dopamine's a good episode. I recorded during the day, so I might have to end up re-recording that. It's just the most chaotic episode. My environment was just nuts at the time. But you have the greatest initial rappers in history who fought through rap not existing to rap becoming something that was a staple in everybody's musical diet who was into the 80s movement. And, most kids like me, white kids like me, we had our British rock era. Maybe some of us got into punk. Our 80s kind of glam rock. Of course, also we kept a lot of the 70s moving forward. The more rock and roll. But then you have classic rap. Classic rap is a form of rap that is pure entertainment mixed with life advice to get yourself out of the ghetto, to not let what's happened to you get you down, figure out you still got some resources, and the main thing is to get educated and stop doing bad things to yourself or getting yourself involved with bad things. When you study classic rap, which really blew up in New York, you've got New York in shambles, man. Absolute shambles. And even though projects were blown up, torn down, and turned into really nice high-rises and things, the people that lived there didn't get to move in. And so you see these derelict streets and these buildings that are half together. And, it's just amazing. And these guys still found a way to say, look, the name of the game is to get out of this game. So here I am, bouncing around the world as a kid, and which, there's psychological damage that starts to occur to you that you have to mature out of, right? So we're all maturing out of adolescence. But you learned all kinds of things from the simplest raps, man. The first band I ever bumped into in my walk of life was RunDMC's 82 album. I think it's just self-titled. But, you get those raps like, it's like that, and that's the way it is, And funny songs like You Talk Too Much. It's interesting. You hear those raps, you talk too much, 7. And so you're learning this sort of etiquette of behavior of like, oh, well, I don't think I talk that much, but wow, look at this song. It's all dedicated to the fact that someone is overplaying their welcome card, And so it just kept going on. And like when I did my episode on Burying Our Heroes, and I focused on Prince Marky D. I talked about the Fat Boys, and I just recap just for a split second, but they did this really funny song about being in jail. And one of the lyrics was very simple. And he says, you're in jail because you failed. And, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm a kid. I'm a good kid. I'm not going to be playing with, the law or anything like that. My nose is so big, it's casting a shadow over here. That's pretty funny. Here's this amazing. And then, of course, LL Cool J shows up on the scene, and that dude is like educating us on a level that's ridiculous, especially with Bigger and Deffer and the song Breakthrough, which was my mantra as a kid moving to California, which was, LL going through all of his trials and tribulations of being famous and getting rich and moving, coming back to Queens and having people talk shit about him right to his face and just being envious. And his whole thing is like, his lyric was all about, while you're standing on the corner talking, crap about me, why don't you take your monkey ass and get a college degree? And then he said, why don't you get a GED, a general education on decency, which is apparently his grandmother finished the lyric for him, which I think is just badass. And then there's this, sort of wild transition going on. And I missed NWA's initial album when it released, which is strange because I was here in Los Angeles. But it was so underground that I don't know. I don't know why I didn't see it. I got Public Enemy stuff right away. And I was shocked when I got Terminator X's style of mixing. It was so chaotic and crazy, and it kind of felt negative to me at first. But it was utter genius. Chuck D and Flavor Flav, genius. Of course, before I found them, I found Eric B. and Rakim and Ice-T. Ice-T was bringing a whole new world I'd never seen before. Really talking about the game and what it was like to be in Los Angeles. And I was here. And so as I'm driving into Los Angeles while listening to Ryan Pace or Power, it's like, oh, he's redefining what I think I'm seeing and the world I get to experience versus the world everyone else gets to experience in those tougher areas of the world, It's very enlightening, very interesting, right? But here we have rap about to go into a massive fracture. It's going to go, classic rap is going to be terminated, and gangster rap is going to take over. Okay. And there's a bunch of rumors about, record executives from that hip hop industry being pulled into a meeting by the prison industry saying, you're going to stop producing these classic rap artists and you're going to start producing all these gangster rap artists because we need customers. It's a highly detailed claim by these individuals. And they even said, look, there's a group above this that's actually controlling this whole conversation. And they recently started speaking out about 5 years ago. But that's a whole different topic, and you can explore that on your own. So you've got rap music being very, very beat-oriented, which for me was fun, honestly. Cool J kept it real for 2 albums. Cool J increased the density of lyrics within a song, within a verse. So you got the first Mozart of rap at the time. And he just had this attitude, man. And of course, Eric B. and Rakim being probably one of the finest rappers on planet Earth, he's doing his thing, but his stuff is so damn clever. You need to grow into his lyrics. As a kid, I loved Eric B. and Rakim, but I didn't understand how utterly brilliant, because I didn't sit down and meticulously analyze the lyrics, because there are no websites to go check out the lyrics where you can find out the meaning of a verse and the cleverness of it all. And sometimes you don't even know what they're saying, It's kind of fun, though. When you get older, you get the chance to look into that and you realize, oh my God, these dudes are utterly brilliant. And what's interesting about rap, just before I jump into Digital Underground and ShockG a little bit, is that you've got this classic rap thing going on, and then you have sort of like bands that are immune, like Beastie Boys. At no point was Beastie Boys ever going to throw down and say that they're carrying guns and sticking up people and you should treat women bad and all this other stuff. Quite the opposite. These guys were the Mel Brooks comedy trio geniuses of rap. And, like their Paul's Boutique album, which was their least famous, least selling album. And when you go back and play it, it might be one of the best rap albums in world history for that era, But when people like Vanilla Ice came out, all right, you can hate on that guy all you want, but we felt there was this lack of genuine nature because you have this kid who should have been a classic rap artist who is trying to be gangster. And that's when, Snow came out from Canada and ends up getting shot. I'm pretty sure he's alive to this day. And Vanilla Ice, he's sort of gone full disclosure on his thing, but they tried to build up his record. Now, the dude was involved with some pretty heavy Florida Russian mobsters in real life, but that might have been after his album had come out. But you felt like, okay, these are the real New Yorkers, and here's the West Coast thing blowing up with Ice-T and Gang and, NWA eventually and a ton of others, right, out of Long Beach. And then you've got folks like Vanilla Ice dropping, and then you have the famous Arsenio interview where Arsenio is like finding out all day long that most of the stuff that's been claimed about Vanilla Ice is fake. And so in this famous interview, if you ever want to watch it, it's pretty funny. Arsenio's just, hats off to this dude. He was just pissed that he had been lied to about all this research. And then when he did his own research, he's like, oh, okay, this guy's a complete fake. And I got to walk out in front of my audience and maintain integrity while doing this interview with him. And Vanilla Ice doubled down on all the lies and stuff like that. So, whatever. He's a good guy. He was just a kid and getting pushed around by a record label saying, you got to say this if you want to stay in this game. Don't you like going 10 times platinum? Okay, well, you're going to have to continue the narration, right? So let me just rewind why I took you through that little recap. When you were in the late 70s, you got, Rapper's Delight, and of course there was at least 4 other bands before that ever got signed. You had, Curtis Blow, I think, was the 4th major album of rap that was ever signed by a record label, and he went gold at least within his early era of his lifetime. So he's blowing up. Super nice guy to this day. You go look at the Vlad interviews with Curtis Blow, and he's just a gentleman. Just unbelievable role model to this day, in my opinion. Fat Boys are one of the other major first record labels. They won a contest that Curtis Blow threw. Curtis becomes their producer, and they had this guy Buff, who's this human beatbox that no one's ever heard before, and it was just intoxicating and entrancing and nothing. Dougie Fresh had sort of invented the beatbox thing, but Buff was like this 5'4" kid who weighed probably 300 pounds at the time, and he could just make sounds that no one else could make. He had a whole different shtick. You love both of them. So then you get there's this incredible demand for rap music, and we've got to backfill the demand. So you get Kool Moe Dee, you just get a ton of folks, right? You even get the Skinny Boys for one record, which actually was not too bad. You get little one-offs like Egyptian Lover. You get Fresh Gordon. Fresh Gordon was one of the coolest tracks ever, and I can't find it anywhere. You get Davey D. It's insulting for me to try to name these folks because they were so plentiful and so amazing. The first time I'd ever heard music really put in a rap song that I think worked for me was, and this isn't the first to happen, but for me it was standing in a record store in Camarillo, California. I finally had just, made it to the promised land. I had my job blew up. I was making good money and just feeling like $1,000. And that was a lot of money back in those days. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden the track Going Back to Cali drops with that freaking muffled trumpet. And that the deepest scratch groove you've ever heard in your freaking life, man. Jiggy, 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 boom. And of course the 808s drop, and LL's doing his thing, and he's like, whoa. But you get NWA, you got Public Enemy, a whole new era is coming, and here comes ShockG with Sex Packets. The best way to describe Sex Packets for older folks that don't like rap music is the Sex Packets is to rap what Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon was to the rock and roll movement of the 60s and 70s. You can't say to anybody, what's Dark Side of the Moon like? Give me another album that's like Dark Side of the Moon. If you can come up with a record, good luck. Was it Sweet Smoke Just a Poke? Maybe. That's a reference for you. But nothing touches that album, right? So here comes Sex Packets, and it's this huge high concept album where ShockG has created multiple personalities. Two that we actually understood at the time the album releases, which is ShockG and Humpty Hump. You know, Humpty, basically the dude Humpty, where he wears the rubber nose and glasses. For the longest time, we didn't know if those two dudes were the same guy. There is no Wikipedia. And the voice was so different. You know, it was Humpty, you know, it was like this crazy, crazy, amazing thing. So that album drops, and everyone's just like, whoa, this is crazy. And the dude, you know what, here's the way I interpret it, right? Because, you know, Terminator X and Public Enemy was his own Pink Floyd as well. I mean, he just had a whole tension release model of writing music that was uncomparable to anybody. They bit the hell out of him, and they copied the hell out of him after he did it. NWA was like really good, great, you know, the heavy gangster rap stuff, but it was very heavy bass lines for that more macabre gangster rap sound, which is, you know, Straight Outta Compton is a masterpiece. There's just no other way to describe it. But what ShockG did, and I had some insider arteries to ShockG, you know, what he was up to because of my connections with Prince's whole band in the 90s. A good friend of mine goes to church with Terry Lewis, Jimmy Jam, Sheila E., Levi Caesar, and just a bunch of Prince's like proteges. And so I would hear rumors and stuff, and I'll just kind of preface this from the 90s, and then we'll jump back to Sex Packets, which is just one of his major creations. I heard that ShockG, who I think has always been in sort of the Miami, Florida area natively, he would grab like Prince's saxophone player, his second saxophone player, not the leads guy, but the other dude. And he flew him to Florida, and he said, look, I need you to start trying to lay down some grooves and some tracks and stuff. We'll see if we can integrate you into the music. I'm not sure he ever did. I'm not sure. I think he might have toured with him once. Wish I could remember that guy's name. I used to have it on the tip of my tongue. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's like way different than any other rap band I'd ever heard of. But what I think that ShockG did, and I heard that guy from New York with the short hair that does the great interviews, man, he's just like an amazing dude. He said it best. He goes, you know, ShockG was basically Parliament mixed with classic rap. But because there was no way to really obsess on ShockG, and again, I'm not like going through my whole catalog of all my music. Oh, I got to look up every single video, every single interview, every single Wikipedia page on people. I'm learning stuff in this last 24 hours that I didn't know. There is a really interesting little video of ShockG in Santa Monica, just right at the promenade. He's in one of the alleyways in the promenade, which is this big open air place in 2016. It's just look up ShockG Freestyle. Santa Monica is the name of the video. And he's back in this alleyway, and he's got this other dude next to him, which I guess he doesn't know. And they're sort of freestyling. And the other dude would go first, and he's kind of like, he's doing a decent job, but he's kind of thinking between his lines, which is just fine. It's real freestyle instead of these guys that write it all and then just show up and pretend to be freestyling, right? That's what made Biggie so huge, man. That dude could just freestyle like nobody's business, standing on a corner store in New York, man, with the PA system. But it cut to ShockG, and he'd start rhyming, and he starts rhyming about his perception of his soul in the universe, and that he is a temporary human, and this is just one of his stays. And he goes, every planet belongs to me, every universe belongs to me. And you start realizing he's a deep thoughter, man. He's got a full existential view on this planet. And he was still with us for another 5 years. I like when my heroes are like me. I dig it. You know, it's just, you get mesmerized by it. Like, you've made good life choices when at the end of the game and the end of their game, you're the same person. Like, that's why I liked you. You know, and I think that's why a lot of us enjoy each other. You know, you guys coming into the comments. I've had 2 amazing conversations, actually 3 amazing conversations with the Patreon folks. I mean, you guys are just phenomenal people. I mean, wow. I don't know about white privilege, but I got Patreon privilege, right? Your comments on YouTube. I mean, I'm learning so much. You guys have expanded my mind. You have to believe and understand that. You may just have me pushing a little like button on your comment, and you're like, well, he didn't really reply to me that much. Sometimes, yeah, it's just you're complimenting me. I compliment you. And other times you guys drop massive paragraphs that changed my life. I've done episodes because of your comments dozens of times, right? So Sex Packets comes out and you've got real music, real Parliament kind of funk music with super duper creative concepts on top. If you grew up with the Humpty dance in your life since was written and performed and released before you're born, you might just be like, it was this guy. He wore rubber nose and glasses. He created this character, Humpty Hump. Starting to little sprinkle on me right now, so if you see any little raindrops, those are real. But when you're in 1990 and this album drops, 89, 90, and this album drops, and you've got this dude creating this just new way of making a groove, right? The groove and the bass line went together, and then you do, was it Do-Do-Do, No Nose Job? It was like No Nose Job, but they did this bumblebee mix of it, and he brings in sort of the Humpty bass line into it, and you got this little tiny scratch that sounds like a bee flying around. It's all, it was just, oh my God, to die for, man. And so you think, okay, well, maybe that's his only shtick. Maybe he can only do this Humpty thing once and it's over. Well, the other cool thing about him, which he gets credit for, is that he understood talent. And so as he looked around the universe, and people came to him and, like Tupac was his roadie at first. Well, somehow Tupac was actually, I think most people know this, but he had a super high IQ, super prodigy child in high school and all of his schooling. He just aced out and he was just effortlessly a genius. And he was a good guy. He honestly was a good guy, even though he had this persona that was very gangsterish. He was pretending that role into existence. Fresh out of jail, I'm out on bail, from California with Dre. It's a persona. But he ended up getting himself shot up because of his persona. Both when he got shot up and survived, and then, of course, when Suge Knight parked him in the middle of the street to get wasted. There was some heavy, real shenanigans going on in the 90s, man. I mean, Big was murdered on purpose with a bunch of CI guys running around the Peterson Car Museum out front with earpieces in their ears, and it stinks to high heaven, man. It was almost like they were saying the intelligence agencies figured out, okay, Tupac's too influential and knows too much about all the crazy inner workings of the music industry and has been vocalizing he doesn't like it. And all he has to do is drop a track and tell the truth, and it's all exposed. So he was of liability. And then Biggie, I don't know. I don't know why he was sacrificed. I just don't know. And I know about and I know that they know who killed him. I mean, they really do know who killed that guy. But that doesn't really matter. The real stories behind all these deaths, you'll never know. I mean, Jason Mizell from, Jam Master Jay's murdered in his studio. Some dude just got through security door, ran upstairs, found him and went bam and killed him. And no one's saying a word. And I've seen interviews with DMC and it sure looks like he knows who did it. But maybe I haven't seen interviews where they really disclose what happened. So, it's like Frank Sinatra, man. The white guys did this too. He's blue eyes. He's a nice kid. He sings. He croons. He's amazing. And then I think he got so tired of being called like the kid and, just being sort of marginalized in the overall description of who he was that I think he just gravitated. And of course, they're gravitating to him. Mobsters are running the clubs that he has to perform at. And, you feel like, oh, wow, I got some people I can call if I got a problem. And that seems really exciting, I think, when you're younger. They sell that whole power trip to you, and then you find out, oh my God, you're a sacrifice. But if you listen to ShockG's lyrics, he's trying to teach you how to not cut up your face. He's also teaching you, I mean, there was a bit of like this, you know, again, if you're much older and you understand the liberal sort of hippie movement of the 60s where it was like free love and that kind of stuff, you're like, oh, I totally get that, but I hate that rap stuff. Well, there was that version of it when Sex Packets came out, which is, AIDS is still huge. It's not even funded yet. The research isn't funded because Magic Johnson says hasn't said he has it yet. And so he's saying, you know, wear a condom and then do what you want, you know. With the Humpty Dance, it was just a character. He dreamed up this character, puts on a rubber nose and glasses, lowers his voice into this really funny sort of like old-time radio voice almost. And what's funny about that freestyle rap he did in the alleyway in 2016 is at one point he's freestyle and he talks about how he can rap without the nose, but when he drops into the, he's filmed from, the light is just all natural. So it's coming in from an alleyway. It would be as if I didn't have this front light on. I'm silhouetted, right? And so he's barely getting lit as he's doing this freestyling. He's a super tall, skinny guy. Always stayed in good shape. But he's freestyling. He'll drop into Humpty like a couple words back and forth. You're like, oh my God. And you just want him to go. You just don't want him to stop being Humpty for at least 3 or 4 minutes, man. But one of the greatest, most brilliant things I ever saw in my freaking life, against all other entertainment experiences I've ever had, and boy, I've had some good ones, man. I used to watch Siren live religiously before it turned into this left-wing condom. And after SNL, the other super treasure, the dessert after SNL, was Night at the Apollo, would air live. Of course, pre-recorded for me. I don't actually know if it was, I don't even know when it was recorded, to be honest, but they used to have a talent contest. And I think it's back on now because they actually ended up kind of losing their lease and things changed for a little while because it's expensive. It's in Harlem, New York, right? But in case you've never seen this show, and they've had some, you know, Asian breakdancer guy that ended up doing like 15 title wins. I mean, this kid was utterly amazing. He just did the same routine every single time. And he would like dance to like Mario Brothers music, and then it would switch up and do all this other just crazy, amazing talent on this show. All kinds of singers. You'd have like a white guy who's really like super chubby come out in a suit, and he just can barely hang on to his clothing, right? And you're like, whoa. And the crowd at the Apollo is famous for being fair, but brutal. You got to bring the town or they're all going like this. And there's a dude, the same, he comes out with this big hook, just like the old vaudeville days, and he'd yank you off the stage, right? Or he'd dance you off the stage, sort of like the Gong Show, right? The woman, oh my God, her name escapes me, sorry. She'd also get you off the stage. But when you come in, there's an old, I think it's an old oak tree stump, and you're supposed to rub it for good luck. And you can lose the whole show if you forget to rub that tree. You got to pay respect, man. It's just like the best thing in the whole world. And you come out and you got to rub that baby, and you can just rub it as much as you want. And the more that you can show that you understand that that's the mojo of the room, you can get points up when you start feeling. But you get these like white guys come out and everyone's just like booing before the guys really got a lyric out. But eventually, if the guy or girl or whatever, like the most atypical person, right? You expect, you know, the locals to show up and kill it, right? Which they did all the time. And you get these really super atypical New Yorkers coming out, and they get a little interview. Okay, man, we'll go on. What are you going to sing for us? And they get you out there, and you're just on your own live, baby. It ain't no pre-recorded, pre-edited bullshit like America's Got Talent where they're faking a bunch of crap in front of you, which that show is like so fucking fake. If you don't know, you got some Apollo to watch to learn what a real show looks like. But these dudes would kill it sometimes, and then you're just like, the whole crowd then just transitions, man, on a dime. Everyone's jumping up and down. There's this old woman in the front. I don't know what her name was. But if she got up and stood up and started going with you on your performance, and she wasn't there the entire time, but there was just a point where she was the queen of the room. If she got up, you perform to her, and you'll lock up the whole room, and at least you'll make it to the end, you know. And typically they do like, hand over the head, scream and yell if they had a tie or something like that. But we're talking about ShockG right now, right? All right. I actually remembered this incorrectly, which is kind of funny. I'm watching this, and I'm doing something else in the room, but I'm watching it. And they have this, I don't know if you remember the Gong Show. The Gong Show had this unknown rapper. He's the guy that wears the plastic bag over his head, and he was just a nutcase, right? I just found out a close friend of mine has been on that show 3 times, and we're still trying to find the episodes. They're out there somewhere. But the unknown rapper would go up, and he just was crazy. He was nuts, and he was just like a super hyper guy. And he just the worst jokes, just right off like popsicle sticks and stuff. But the way he performed it was ingenious, and he's now revealed himself, so you can see who he is today. But Night at the Apollo, it starts at midnight, man. Oh, no, it starts at 1 o'clock. Sorry. And I think, right? Can't remember. Yeah, it was 11:30 to 12, and then yeah, I guess it was 12:01. So anyway, out comes these 3 guys, and they got the bags over their heads, and they're acting really weird. And I can't remember who the hell the host was at the time. He was that really tall brother. But he's like interviewing me. He goes, "Oh, we're the unknown rappers." And he's like, "Okay, they're rubbing the thing, and it's all good. And they're going to do a rap for us. And we're going to do an original rap," they said. And so they go out there, and they just intentionally start performing the worst rap you've ever heard in your life. And if I remember right, there was like barely any beats to it or anything. It was like it was just an awful performance on purpose. And they are trying to get the audience to boo them off stage, right? Because as soon as they boo, 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 it has to hold for a little while, and then this siren goes off, and that's when the dude comes out and throws you off the stage. And then it happens. The whole crowd turns on these guys, and they're all just doing the move, man. Get off the stage, get off the stage. And that's when ShockG and 2 other dudes, I can't remember exactly which ones they were, take those masks and pull them off, throw them. The curtain flies up. Digital Underground's on stage. I thought it was Humpty Dance, but it wasn't. It was, I think it was Do What You Like. I can't remember. But here comes this huge groove. The place realizes, oh my God, this isn't part of the talent show. We're getting to see the #1 newcomer to rap, Digital Underground, playing on stage. Unbelievable. I remember watching this, and I am just like jumping up and down in my bedroom or my front room, and I was so freaking happy. Incredible. And I'm just so glad that I happened to tune in that night, because if I'd missed it, it is on YouTube. It is a horrible, old recording. I don't know, 480p, 4x3, right? But that's the creativity. That's the brilliance of this dude. The other one is just lyrical style. The greats are lyrical geniuses, aren't they? If you know rap, you know. The guys that don't make it, they might be pumped up. There might be $5 million of promo stuffed in them, and so they get up there, and you see them a lot. You have to hear them a lot. That's their 15 minutes of fame. The geniuses last for a long time. They don't need as much promotion. Or if they do get the promotion money, it goes a lot further because the product's going to sell itself. And that was Digital Underground. As ShockG was noted and recognized for like 3 or 4, like one group of guys went off and made a whole nother band. Tupac goes off and makes another band. I mean, like just one after the other went off and did an amazing production. And interestingly enough, the facts are that a lot of times when people, at least in the last 20 years, then they break off of a group project, they tend to be lured into sort of scandalous recalls of what it was like to be stuck with that other person. And so they're encouraged to badmouth where they started. It's just a current affairs formula to put more hatred in the world, right? Well, via folks that interviewed all these breakaway bands, they had nothing but admiration for ShockG. They said that dude is an utter genius. People don't even know how many personas he had created because he would just do them, and we'd even have to go like, who was that? And he would come up with something. He also drew a lot of his album cover artwork. So like Rob Zombie would draw his album covers. A lot of that crazy artwork, both for White Zombie and Rob Zombie, he's doing all the sketching himself. And maybe as weird as it is, it's still amazing, and you have to give the dude credit for having a full concept album / offering to us. I talked about in the Bearing Heroes episode that there's this weird irrational thing that seems to happen to us, and I still can't explain it. Now, I did tell you that, I think we always wish well on our heroes, of course. And, like Shirley Temple, for instance, ceased to become an actress way before she passed away, and she got into politics and that kind of stuff, which was cool. But no matter if she had or not, you still wish her the best. All the little rascals, you wish them the best. A bunch of them died early, but so that's just like a general blanket statement I think we can all get behind. But as we have become, I think, more aware of how the world is going south, or at least there's factions that are trying to make us all hate each other for these other agendas to divide us and then conquer us. And unfortunately, they've been extremely successful in that. What really rubs me the wrong way is that you got a bunch of classic rappers that definitely did not have any lack of police brutality, of racism issues they had to deal with. And they realized that it was like, you know what? I can't change other people. I can't make people like me. Except to go do something amazing that they then appreciate, and they realize they were wrong. And that's really the only way you can do it. You can't put a gun in someone's face and say, like me. You can never do it. It'd be horrible if that worked. But that's what they're trying to convince kids that can work right now. And so there's a bunch of us, old school rap folks, and, go back to R&B, go back to just soul music and rhythm and blues. And every one of those dudes and women had those stories of being, treated like crap. And they won people over. And some of them, Michael Jackson couldn't win people over. Michael Jackson, I don't know if I mentioned it in a previous episode, but I just learned that he pulled over as a kid after he made his first gigantic money that was all his. That was a bird, by the way. He bought a Rolls Royce, and he started driving around Los Angeles, and then he got pulled over. And his mother told him, I told you never to drive by yourself. But this cop drags him out of the car and says, I know that you stole this car. He's Michael Jackson, dude. What rock have you been living under that you look Michael Jackson in the face and you don't recognize the dude? I mean, wow. Not only do you get an F plus on the racism card, but you get an F plus on just being plugged into humanity. I'm always talking about Richard Pryor. I was so raised on him so early in life that it never occurred to me that he lived through all the racism when he was a kid. But what did he do? He worked it into it after he got off like the Ed Sullivan Show and with the Tonight Show and various like little things where he was kind of having to stay in a box, just like George Carlin said. George Carlin was doing 200 television appearances before he realized, he goes, I am nothing more than a cliche, and I don't want to be that guy anymore. And so that's when he broke off and created the 7 Deadly Words, and that's where we know him today. Of course, he got seriously political, and now he's one of the most quoted comedians for being awake way before everybody else was to the tyranny and serfdom that's trying to be reintroduced to society under other flags, right? I'm mentioning all this because it was the 2016 thing that just, I don't know, it was almost like Shock said, okay, I want you to see this because you're right about me. And when he does this little freestyle thing in the alleyway, you hear his soul talking, and it's just right out of the show, man. It's just, he was always there. He was always enlightened. He was always a Buddha. He understood his spiritual place in the universe, and he realized that this was all temporary. He's going to be okay. And what's interesting about it is we talked about the afterlife several times on this show, and at exhaustion, right? At nausea, as they say. And, we will have no problem lamenting about how we think if you believe in such a thing, that it should be better than here anyway. for the sake of just being out of the instrumentalities of of the human body. You're no longer going to get sick. Aches and pains will go away until you're reborn, whatever. But it's another thing. I mean, imagine you die and you're totally a closed-minded atheist. You never studied the fact that energy can't be hidden in the universe, that something from nothing is never going to be an algorithm that will ever make sense on paper. But you're scientific. Isn't that funny? Open your mouth and remove all doubt, as they say. And then you immediately learn that you were wrong at a level that's almost infinitely the other direction. Oh, hi, atheist. By the way, there is an afterlife, and it is so infinitely beyond your comprehension of freedom, love, and happiness. Well, you're going to go back down. There's a green room. You're going to have some time to chill out. Just imagine the amazing learning curve that person's going to have to go through, even if they get the whole, Matrix, I know Kung Fu plug. It's still they're still limited in their capability of enjoying the afterlife because they never thought it existed. Meaning they never premeditated a plan of how to handle it. Even metaphorically, which is all we can do. Then you take a ShockG, and he passes away. Any one of us, most likely. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I knew Dreamland was right on the other side, and I'm glad to be here. What part of what I thought was true is true? And what are the surprises you got for me? And it's just this wonderful experience of immediately interacting with that universe, that other side of it. So there was great comfort in seeing him lament about his perception and perspective of himself in this universe after learning that he passed, Now, I don't know if we'll ever know how he passed, and it's, well, if we learn how he passed, is that going to bring him back? No. We're going to shed perhaps a couple more tears if we learn that it was drug-related and perhaps semi-intentional, like one of these things of like, the only thing I think, I'm not a big drug user, so I don't really know, but I imagine that if you're suicidal and you're a drug user, that even Prince might have been at a point where he's thinking, well, I've done a ton of things. I got 1,000 songs in the vault. And, I could keep going. The world's turning into a really weird place. And, maybe I could take a few risks here and there. That's sort of how I perceive that to be the case. And if you're already somewhat under the influence when you're trying to make these decisions about your dosage, what was it? King Crosby from Rat, the big, tall, blonde Thor who was in Rat. Apparently one of the nicest, sweetest, amazing human beings on planet Earth, according to all the band members and every human that ever met him. He ends up in the hospital with a T-cell count that is super duper low. They say he had gotten AIDS from needles. We now know that heroin, and which Nikki Sixx introduced him to. Thank you, Nikki. That kills your T-cells, straight out. Virologists and chemists are trying to teach you. You can't put all that stuff in your body and expect your body to continue working. So they have purposely done the studies to prove that cocaine and heroin kills your T-cell count. Now, some people do enough and back off that they get it. They don't do too much. So even though they don't have the top T-cell count, they're not going to die of some immune deficiency problem. But Crosby got in that situation. He was rendered incapable of playing the guitar anymore because of his drug addiction. So somehow someone smuggled into the hospital a lethal dose of heroin. And he most likely injected it into himself, and we lost him. And he had most likely made amends with life and simply said, okay, I made my mark. I'm okay now. I'm going to die anyway. This is not very fun to have this immune deficiency problem and just be eaten alive by my own body. So I'm going to take charge like a cowboy and do it. Must be an amazing decision to make, In some cases, we try to filter that in our brains and try to realize, well, does that compromise their accomplishments while they were here because they passed away in an intentional manner? And I think absolutely not. I just don't. I think, unknowingly taking a shot that's going to kill you, believing it's going to heal you, and that might be up for grabs. I don't know why the ShockG Death bothers me so much. On the sort of trendy side of interpreting these sort of passings, we don't know the immediate future here, but we know that they go in threes. You know, at least we notice them in threes. Obviously, I don't like that. Whether or not anything's connected, well, you just let your mind go and you make your own decision about such a thing. Again, there's rumors, very heavy rumors here in Los Angeles that DMX's family's like he took that shot and within 24 hours had this heart attack. And then, of course, they're trying to say it was some sort of drug overdose. Okay, well, you know, who knows? Again, it's not going to bring the person back. We've been blessed with their catalog. Elvis died in the toilet of his own volition, of his own abuse. So we've seen it on all categories of music, especially. I guess the big question I have sort of at the end of this episode is one of those things of, you know, anyone who's lost someone recently will tell you, or if they've had a really pronounced one in their lifetime, you know, give people hugs, call people up on the phone, send them a text message, whatever you got to do. If you love somebody, you know, make sure you tell them that that's the case. It may or may not have any impact on their decision to stay in this world. But I think for your own sake, it's good for your soul. It's good for your soul, especially if nothing happens. You build up that relationship, right? I think with celebrities, it's a little tough because you don't have access to them. You know, when Robin Williams passed, I asked one of his best friends that introduced me to him once. I said, you know, well, what do you think, man? I hate to ask this question, but you did stand up with him in the early 80s. You knew him. You introduced me to him. What do you think, man? And this is a brilliant guy. And he said to me, well, we weren't surprised. And so, you know, you're like, okay, well, that's a guy that's super brilliant, super close to this man. And if the closest human beings to someone can't alter the course of time, then I don't think we have to beat ourselves up. We just mourn with the rest of the group. And there was this moment in the movie Groundhog Day, which I always think about when I think about our fate. And it's funny, it's mentioned a lot in science fiction movies and, you know, and sort of more lore-based movies. You know, do you believe in fate? And fate is sort of a deterministic view of the universe, which is your whole life was written in a book, in a script, and you're simply living it and you can't do anything to change it. I think most people have seen Groundhog Day, but just in case you haven't seen it, Bill Murray is a news reporter, goes off to this little town. He hates this assignment. He's got Chris Elliott as his cameraman, and this other beautiful woman, name escapes me, is his counterpart. And he ends up going to sleep that night and waking up to Sonny and Cher's I Got You, Babe. And his day keeps repeating, and he doesn't know why. He's just trying to get out of this algorithm. So for a long time, he doesn't know exactly, you know, that it's happening and doesn't understand, and so he's trying to fight it. But he ends up falling in love with his female counterpart in the news crew, and he keeps living every day, learning things, learns how to speak different languages, learns how to operate on people, learns how to play the piano, learns how to do all this amazing stuff. And every day he goes on a date with this girl, and he gets slapped in the face eventually, and he keeps just changing the algorithm until he gets through a whole date together. He has the perfect day with her. Maybe that's the trigger to end this loop. I can't remember. But during this whole situation, there was a homeless guy that is always in his loop. And he ignores him forever. And then he ends up finding out that that guy died. And so he's like, okay, all right, I'm going to focus on this guy. And as part of my other journey to get this girl to date me and fall in love with him, he's going to save this dude's life. And so he keeps picking him up every morning and trying different things, giving him food and taking him to the hospital and doing all kinds of stuff. And no matter what he does, this homeless man dies. And it's so well done in this production. I have never been able to shake that scene. And so for me, you kind of wonder, because if you're ever getting into math and you get into like Douglas Adams' theory of the fairy cake, where you can, extrapolate all of reality from one thing in the universe, because the way that thing exists today, like this cigar exists today because of everything that's ever happened in the universe. It's not probably technically true because a bunch of particles have nothing to do with this, but the stuff that's around you. And we are locked into that grid, aren't we? We are also part of everything. And so fate and determinism can get on you the more you become a mathematician and you start to realize the cause and effect models of all things. Equal and opposite reaction, right? So part of it is like, death is not by any means the end of your life. Two, I think we're here for a reason, so our job is not to just punch out every single time something really bad gets on us and it seems like you can't get it off of you. You will get it off of you, but it doesn't seem like you can. And so that all just factors in at the end. But I think in the end, we want to keep our treasures to society just in case they have one more trick up their sleeve. A lot of musicians have pulled out of life and then come back and they found out that there was a second phase of their life. And the easy ones is to look at a lot of the musicians and even actors who think that their career's over. And someone like Tarantino pulls them out of having never been in a film in a really long time, and all of a sudden they're now a household word again. And the movie's like #1 in the box office, and they're getting interviews again, and everyone's finding out, oh my God, why did you ever go to the wayside? And it was because at one point in their career, the fad of what they were disappeared, but the fad always returns, doesn't it? I mean, think George Clinton, man, from Parliament, great example. Hot as hell in the 70s. A little bit of a lull, but by the 90s, he was doing the soundtrack for Austin Powers. He starts doing brand new songs, working with other artists. Tremendous, right? David Bowie. David Bowie did just little tiny spurts, maybe 5 years here, 5 years there, where he was in and out of the game. Even Michael Jackson would take tremendous time off, 8 to 10 years to make another song. There's always a place. And, what if, the thing is like, if I mention that algorithm to you, you might believe me and then suddenly have more faith when things aren't going so well. But just play a little mind game with yourself. Imagine God shows up. Whatever you think God is, a woman, a man, a light, whatever you think God is, some omnipotent being that knows all that math. And they say to you, well, you actually do have free will to punch in and out as you like. Literally, you can choose when to be reborn and you can choose when to take your life or just die naturally. You can choose that stuff. So I made it. I don't want a bunch of robots in this universe. I want real living beings that I can watch, observe, and celebrate. But God says to you, I know this seems like some pretty bad funk you're in. And, honestly, there's multiple paths you can take. One path, the funk, consumes you, and you do punch out. Another path, it's a little shorter, but you do rebound. But the level at which you rebound, it's just okay. You'll definitely not be thinking about hurting yourself anymore, but, it's just okay. And then there's another path where it's more pain, worse than what you're feeling now. But here's what I'm going to guarantee you. When you punch out of this stuff, it's glorious, man. What you do to the universe, what you do to your life, what you're about to experience, if you're willing to stick with this pain, it's definitely sort of my responsibility because I made the universe, but it's also a responsibility of your choices. It's magnificent what you end up doing. And so then you get done with that conversation with God, poof, he or she's gone, and you now look at the whole world a little bit different. And yeah, those bills aren't getting paid. And yeah, man, maybe your car gets repossessed. You get kicked out of your house. You lose your job. You're like, this must have been what God was talking about. But the whole time you have this little seed in your brain that's like, well, he told me, or she told me, it's going to get better. I just need to persevere, focus on who I am as a person, Be good, be honest, do no harm, and things are going to get better. So I'm eager. I'm eager to find out what that other thing is. I used to do this story. I think I've said it at least once in my creativity episode way back in season 1. I just did this for a friend of mine because she's trying to get really creative, and she's sort of doubting whether or not she is that caliber of person in this thing that she wants to do. And so I said, well, I used to teach a creativity class to get people to understand that they actually do have a creative mind. Like everybody who says they're not creative but they can't watch scary movies. Wow, what a funny little oxymoron. The reason why you hate scary movies is when you go back to your bedroom, you think a monster's going to get you or something. That's creative. But the trick is this. Let's say you and I know each other and you're sort of bummed out about your skill set. You've been trying to do something for a long time and it's not working out. You haven't had your make it moment just yet. But now, I say goodbye to you on Monday, and by Friday, I ring your doorbell, and I'm standing there, and it's me. You know it's me. My voice, I know everything that we've ever experienced together. Man, I look a little older. Maybe I have gray hair instead of blonde hair. My skin's a little more saggy than it is today. You're kind of like, dude, you look a little older. I'm like, yeah. I can't really, that's not really important right now. What's really important right now is I say, you see that car out front? You're not going to believe me, but you're not going to fear riding in the car with me, right? No. That car is a time machine. The reason why I look older is because I'm from the future. And I can't really describe it to you right now because it's not important. But you and that thing that you like to do, you do something way beyond what you're doing now. It's in the same vector of where you're going, but it's phenomenal. And it's very important that this happens. And I learned from you in the future that I did this, so I've got to do this right now because this is the linchpin for you finding yourself. I need to get you in that car. We're going to drive 88 miles an hour, whatever it takes. Flux capacitor fires, boom, we're in the future. And I'm going to show you what you did because there's no way I can sit here and describe it to you forever. But when you see it, you're going to get it. And as soon as I bring you back, you're going to be on your journey to that destination. You trust me. You get in the car. We do it. Boom, boom, boom. We're in the future. You're looking around. You're like, whoa. I know it's only a few years in the future, but yeah, I can see the differences. Highways have been reconstructed, new buildings. Oh, there's some cars out there I don't even recognize. Music on the radio is a little weird. But it's nighttime. And you're like, where are we going? I said, well, we're going to go to this event that you are responsible for. In fact, maybe I even take you further than 10 years in the future. Who knows? But I parked the car next to this really long building. It's a big turn in the road down there. And around the corner, you can see a bunch of light. You can hear a bunch of noise. You see people running past our car, trying to get down there. And I'm telling you that the event that's around that corner down there is because of you. We pop out of the car. Because for whatever reason, we can't get close. And now we're walking. And you're just sitting there imagining what it is around that corner that belongs to you. Before you turn the corner, as the music gets louder, as the light gets brighter, as the screams of people enjoying whatever the hell you did is echoing around the corner. I guarantee you, the second before you turn that corner, you've probably got the idea. You probably have 10 other ideas that you could have done, but you've got one of them in your brain that is the one that you could do today if you just focus. Get rid of all the video games, get rid of all the crap, the social media. This is something you can learn that furthers your journey. But just focus. The more you can role play that in your head, I think you'll become pretty damn invincible in this world. As phenomenal as ShockG was born into this world, he still was a human being. For whatever reason, and I don't have any clue what happened to him, in his 20s, he was able to burst into this world, multiple layers of genius in a single project, and they did it over and over and over again. Prince, same way. I just watched an interview with Morris Day. I think it was with Vlad TV. Great interview with him. That guy is so first class. It's just crazy. Morris looks better today in 2021 than he's ever looked in his entire life. And he's always looked pretty damn good. But he was describing Prince at 13 years old in his band called Grand Central. And he said, at one point, Prince left Grand Central to go solo. And he creates the Revolution, does his thing, right? And they said, you could replace everyone else in the band, but you couldn't replace Prince. And he said, look, at 13 years old, this kid was off the chain in every single respect. He said he was knocking out Santana solos and Jimi Hendrix solos. And he goes, he wasn't just scratching around the guitar. He was doing them picture perfect at 13 years old. Well, by the time he had 18, they said he could play like 32 instruments, man, and play them fluently. James Brown said, I watched him play the drums, and he goes, the brother never missed a beat. Just James Brown. Created funky drummer, man. Cool thing about James Brown was that the cymbals the white guys used to create noise to then catch up with their performance. And there are amazing drummers out there that don't have any problem, but if you were a crappy drummer, all you need to do was fill, slam the crash cymbal, and then you could screw up for the next second, and no one would really notice because there's so much white noise going out of the tweeters that no one can hear anything else, right? It's like a laugh going out so loud you can't hear the next line. With James Brown, you have such tight drums. It's like jazz. You have no room for error. You miss one beat, one cymbal, one snare, one tom, one kick, and James is going to notice. He's going to dock your pay. That's amazing. Creates a world where utter perfection is what you have to have, Do that for yourself. Be your own James Brown. Create parameters where if you can meet those parameters, you're doing something right. It could be something totally little in your life that doesn't have anything to do with anyone else even knowing you're doing it. You're perfecting your typing. You're perfecting your spelling like I had to do when I was younger. Anyway, I could go on forever. We're going to miss Shock. He was an amazing dude. Good energy in this world. Hopefully it's like Obi-Wan Kenobi and now he's stronger than we can possibly imagine, right? Bleeding into all of us now. If you believe that intuition could possibly be a voice from beyond, whispering in your ear, or giving your gut a good feeling or a bad feeling, then maybe we just gained an incredible guide on the other side. I think you need to invite them into your life if you want such powers, because I don't think they have the right to just mess with you. So I don't know, play with that one. I do. And if you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. Short bumper today. Everything media is up there. Video, audio, social media, all new Mastered Season 1, a store, and of course, 2 ways to contribute to all the Patreons. I love you. I'll get to talk to every single one of you. If you haven't noticed yet and you're a Patreon, go up to Patreon chat because I've sent you a chat with my contact information so we can set up a call at a minimum, at least an audio call. But I'm doing FaceTime and taking people to a tour of my place and all this other stuff. So get up there and get you some. And until then, take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over and out.